Okay, hi, you're here today, listeners listening to the Lament of Hope blog and podcast. I'm here today with Judy Norton. Um, Probably most of you know her the best from the Waltons. She played Mary Ellen, who I think is one of the most real of the teens, experiencing just life and all the challenges that come with that. But Judy is also, she has a Christmas album. It was published last year, but she's advertising for it again, Home for Christmas. Judy, can you tell us a little bit more about the album? And even, I'm sure most of my listeners don't even know you sang. So just getting to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yes, and thank you for having me on as a guest here and giving me an opportunity to share a little bit more about my life and my career and things that people may not know about me. So, yes, the singing. It kind of started from when I was very young that I had an opportunity to be part of some little children's recital things through a voice teacher my mother studied with. My mom had sung professionally when I was young. So I always loved that. I did my first children's musical for a year on weekends when I was about 7. So it was something I always loved and was always interested in doing, but didn't realize that it wasn't, I only had a marginal amount of natural talent. And when I was about 16, I discovered that marginal wasn't going to cut it. That my pitch was really highly suspect, and I wasn't aware of that because I couldn't hear it. I don't know if people are aware, but oftentimes it's hard to listen to yourself and correctly hear your own pitch.
Yeah.
For some of us, it can be a developed ability. So at 16, I recorded myself one day and was horrified to find out when I played it back how suspect my pitch was. And I was a little heartbroken because I so loved it. So, I so loved singing and I wanted to be good at it. But I never sang on the show, which people frequently ask me about why I didn't when people do know that I sing and have come to a point of being able to sing well. But of course, the character of Jason was really the musical one. So it didn't particularly make sense for my character to all of a sudden be able to sing. And in fact, in one episode where Jason was doing some duets and something came up about it, and this other girl, Erin Moran, was a guest star and she was going to be singing with him, and some comment was made about my character having the voice of a frog or whatever. So I was always sort of portrayed as someone who couldn't sing anyway, so it made no sense. But I did take those years to study. I took myself to a voice teacher because I thought some things I do just for myself. And that was initially one of them. That I thought, even if I'm only singing around the house or with the family, we're singing along to things or in my car, I wanted for myself to feel like I was at least competent. So I started studying. When I had a few opportunities to do some things in terms of just publicity events or things like that, promotion things where I might go in and sing a couple songs someplace. When the series ended, I was able to start pursuing musical theater, which had become a goal of mine. And my training had all been musically geared towards musical theater. So I started auditioning for that and got my first professional musical, got my union card, got to perform at Heinz Hall with the Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera. It was really exciting. And that just really propelled me forward. I thought, wow, somebody actually would hire me and pay me money to do this as a professional, which was so motivating for me because I thought no one would ever pay me to sing. I might have to pay my family to listen to me. So that was encouraging. So I studied even harder and continued from there. So I was the product of years and years and years of studying, which is what I say to people sometimes who say, oh, I can't sing. It's like anything. If you really, you can go through the technical steps. It's like studying to do anything. Some people have natural talent and they don't need it, but for people who don't, like me, it was just a lot, thousands and thousands of hours of exercises, singing and practicing and working and all of that. So in moving along and getting an opportunity to then start doing musical theater, there was a point where a producer I was working with wanted to do a concert show. And so he asked me to be one of the singers in this sort of concert show that he was doing. So that began some of the just straight up concert work, because before that I thought I still didn't have the confidence to say I'm a singer. I'm like, I'm an actor who sings. So it gave me the opportunity to hide behind a character and think, well, if I don't sing brilliantly, then I can always say, well, I'm really an actor who sings. You know, I wasn't ready to call myself a singer.
Yeah.
So starting to step out and do concert work then was me committing to saying, I'm a singer and I don't have to hide behind a role, which was a big step for me. You know, I mean, because the thing is, like most people who go into singing and stuff or bands, they have that whole garage band experience or something. They have the opportunity to go out and build something. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody has any expectations. They can go through that, the growing pains and the gaining the experience and getting comfortable in front of an audience and making the mistakes and sucking and improving. Whereas for me, when I started singing professionally in front of people, I was already known as an actor who had a very successful career. So I felt that the bar was already an expectation that I would be as competent a professional as a singer as I was as an actor, and I wasn't yet. So that was definitely a road for me to get to. So anyway, this is a really long answer to a short question, but ultimately I hit a point where people would say, well, do you have a CD? Do you have something? And I had finally started to look at doing some recording, and I had done one CD that I recorded a live concert, like a cabaret show that I did, and turned that in, then had that mastered into a CD. But Christmas music was something I always wanted to do. Forever, I'd wanted to do a Christmas CD, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. And during COVID, where there were so many things that couldn't be done, I thought that was the time where I could focus and take the time to put that together. So this was the culmination of sort of a lifetime journey and choosing something that was near and dear to my heart. I love Christmas. I love holiday music. And these are the songs that I grew up listening to from the time I was young, that my mom would sing, that, you know, we'd sing along with the radio, that you go caroling, you do all those types of things. So it just, to me, evokes so many happy, warm memories from over the years that I wanted to do it. And I feel like holiday music is sort of timeless. Hence why I feel like, even though I released this last year, that there are people who haven't potentially heard it, would like to have it, would like to gift it to someone else who loves Christmas music. So I feel it's a perennial kind of a CD that I can, you know, it isn't, well, this is a one and done. And if you,
And so if people order it for your website, if they're buying it as a gift for someone, is there an option to like autograph it on behalf of someone else?
Absolutely. The hard copies, and I'm shamelessly plugging. So this is, there it is. I'm picking up reflection. That is the CD. And if you order it through my website, which is really simple, judynorton.com, I do sign all of them. If you don't specify who you would like it signed to, I just either sign it to the person who ordered it, or I do it generically. But there is a section under the ordering that says notes. And if you write in the notes that you'd like it to a particular person, if there's something particular you'd like me to say, put that in the notes, and I do personally sign them all. So that's the hard copies that are available, that either for you as an individual or someone you would like to gift it to. If you would like to check it out or hear it, or you're not a lot of people I find don't have CD players anymore. They're like, I don't have one. They aren't in cars anymore. We're so used to doing everything through streaming now. It is on all the streaming platforms. So you can also look it up and get it through any of your favorite streaming platforms and just add it to your playlists and stuff.
When when you were talking about how much you love Christmas music, is there a song in particular, either on this album or just any Christmas song in general, that really resonates with you, like your heart as a person, that you really love and enjoy singing?
Oh, it's hard to pick one. I think one of them that always stands out to me is "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." Um, and probably White Christmas, because two of my favorite holiday movies are the movie White Christmas. I watch it every single year. I have my sort of traditional movies I watch every year. So White Christmas is one of them. And then Meet Me in St. Louis is the whole end section of it that is Christmas time, and Judy Garland singing to Margaret O'Brien when they think their life is going down a journey that is difficult for them, that it's a very heartfelt moment. So those are probably a couple that I immediately knew I wanted, because they do represent Christmas to me, and things, memories that I have from specifically every year of Christmas as long as I can remember.
What was your childhood like growing up?
It was pretty simple and pretty, nothing, I would say normal, but that's relative to any person and what they consider normal. But a small family. My mother's from England and my father's from Canada, so don't really have extended aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff that came to the States. So I have an older sister and a younger brother, so it was kind of just that nuclear family pretty much. And so we did all the sort of standard small family, middle class. Grew up in Southern California, born and raised in LA. So I didn't really get to do the sort of the snowy Christmas thing, which was probably something that I always dreamed of creating, which is probably why I love White Christmas so much, because this idea that they go and they create this Christmas show and they're waiting for the snow, and then the snow comes and they go on sleigh rides. And, that kind of image was, I think, something that I always had this sense that it would be fun to create, to go to some cabin and bring together a group of people that you love to be with and be in the snow and do all those things. But, we put up a tree and we played holiday music and we opened presents. We were all excited and opened presents on Christmas morning, and, had a traditional turkey dinner. And so those were kind of my childhood Christmas things. Nothing was extravagant. It was, it was just kind of the family thing. And so that was fun. I've also had the opportunity over the years to be away and performing at Christmas, which now I find, when I have that opportunity, I also find very special. Because as commercialized as Christmas has become sometimes, I feel like some of the things that gave me the excitement of when I was young, it's harder to recreate those. I don't, the families you grow up, it's like my brothers and sisters, they have their own families. So you don't necessarily bring everybody together in the same way. And I feel that in a lot of ways, Christmas is most enjoyed through the eyes of children.
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, I love all the decorating and I love being out and being able to see the store windows and stuff, but trying to hold on to the spirit of Christmas rather than the commercialism of it, I think has become more challenging. So when I have a chance to be doing something that combines things I love, being able to entertain people and yet experience the spirit of Christmas is kind of special. I think in particular, 2 years I was able to go and perform for our troops on USO tours. And those were a couple of my most memorable Christmases, was being out and, singing some holiday songs and some other songs to entertain our troops who weren't able themselves to be home for Christmas. So that was really heartwarming and gave me a sense of doing something to give back, and to say thank you to, the men and women who make those choices to, on behalf of all of us, and to be away from their families. And I went to remote areas. I went to Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, and Greenland and Iceland, and places where these troops were out there for months in an isolated area. Really made you feel how much they appreciated somebody coming to see them and to gift them with something special for the holidays.
What do you think was your fondest memory as a child? Was it your holidays that you spent with your family, or was there something else as a kid that you just think of really fondly that kind of was like, that was my childhood, you remember it?
I think, you know, the points that stood out the most to me are probably when I started working on the series. I always loved working. To me, that was fun. That was a game. That was something different. I mean, yes, I had fun playing with my friends and running around and doing all of that. But since I always so enjoyed performing, that it was just fun for me. So anytime I got to be doing something like that, so to go from having what would be a normal childhood experience of being with your family, playing with your friends, going to school, doing your homework, that is sort of the traditional pattern that most children experience. So then to factor in, I mean, going and filming the homecoming was so incredible. And it was my first time being on an airplane. We spent our last week filming in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So to go up there and be immersed in the snow for a Southern California kid who never, besides driving into the local mountains sometime and playing around in the snow and going home, to immerse myself in that and to do things like go on a sleigh ride and have this sort of throwback experience, because it was a show set in the 1930s. So we were going to a more remote area that just felt like stepping back in time. So that week there is really imprinted strongly as a memory. Plus, it being the beginning of a whole change in my life in general, of launching my career really, and also the creation of this second family that I have, because we have now been together for more than 50 years, and the bonds that we built is an extension. We are a family, we're that close and we have those kinds of bonds. So that turning point in my life of adding in, not just, it's like I'd had the school experience and the hanging with friends and doing all that kind of stuff and being involved in school clubs and activities and stuff. And so then to have this unique experience from the age of 13 just felt like such a gift.
Is there something your mom or your dad said to you growing up that made an imprint on you? It can be a positive or it can be a negative thing.
Oh gosh. I don't know that there's something so much as was said as the that they were willing to facilitate this
Hmm.
and allow me and make it possible through, my father sort of did the research, and it wasn't something that I specifically said, hey, I want to do this, as much as he worked with someone whose children were doing some sort of performing work, and so he thought that, sort of, well, my kids are as good as their kids, so my kids could do this. So he sort of initiated it. And then it was sort of, and it was with all me, my sister, and brother, sort of all three of us were sort of given this opportunity to explore it and see if we liked it, if we
Hmm.
had the opportunities. So I was the only one who really had the opportunities that led to something else. My brother and
Hmm.
sister both did a little bit of work, but for whatever reason, they either weren't cast in things or they didn't really have the desire to pursue it. So they both sort of dropped out of it. And I'm the only one who pursued it. But I don't know if a natural progression of my life would have included me going to my parents and saying, this is what I want to do. I want to be
Hmm.
an actor, as a child. But when given that opportunity in that arena and discovering how much I loved it, I really wanted to continue to play that game, having no idea what it meant to try and pursue as an adult and try and make a living at it. We can be very naive as children. I thought, oh, it's enough to just say I want to do this. And it worked out pretty well for me. So I was very fortunate. So I think just that belief. My father was kind of more of a stage father than my mother was a stage mother. So there were times where that was challenging for me, because I felt that he pushed me in ways that I wasn't always comfortable with.
Hmm.
And I imagined that it was helpful in ways that I didn't appreciate or recognize at the time. But I certainly didn't always appreciate it at the time. Um, but that innate belief, I guess, that neither of them ever gave me the slightest inclination that I wasn't good at it or,
Hmm.
you know, couldn't do it. So I think maybe that unspoken thing of that you can kind of do anything, and
Hmm.
that sort of judgment didn't exist in, oh, well, you're really not good enough to do this. If I felt that, I felt it more in other places,
Hmm.
the way in which that can happen. Like my very first little musical as a child, I thought I wanted to do the lead. I was like, oh, it was a production of Cinderella, oddly enough, which was ultimately my first professional musical. And I thought, oh, I'm perfect for Cinderella. And I didn't get cast as Cinderella. I was some little countess at a ball. I'm like, what is this? There isn't, what countess at ball? So that was a little, but I think I was more disgruntled, thinking, well, I'm good enough to be Cinderella. Why didn't they let me? It didn't, I think, occur to me that I wasn't good enough. I'm like, oh, I can learn all of this. So learning things, memorizing things was not a problem. So I think I didn't necessarily question my own ability and my own skill until later in my life. I was blissfully unaware as a child,
Hmm.
which I think was good. And I think it helped me that because I was sort of shy and timid when I was young, and it was difficult for me to go in an audition,
Hmm.
not to get up and perform, but to go into an audition situation where it's a room full of adults and you're being judged. And so that I would kind of be very intimidated by, and it took me some time to get past that sort of sense that people were watching me and judging me. But if I were
Mm.
actually just performing, then I didn't necessarily feel that. If I were on stage or on camera, I didn't feel the same judgment.
Hmm. What do you think was the hardest thing about being a child actor starting out? Like, is there something that you remember keenly as you're a child and you're growing and you're maturing, you're experiencing life for all the things that life has to offer at kind of a rapid pace as a child normally? What did you find the hardest about developing during that time?
I think when either auditions or roles, when they were a little too personal, um, I wasn't really comfortable with things that hit too close to home. Like if it
Hmm.
was a role that I thought, oh, I'd have to say this or do that, and it was something that was personally embarrassing to me, those types of things were tough for me. I felt I would get embarrassed easily. And so if I were auditioning for a role that where I wasn't really comfortable, then I usually didn't do a very good audition. No surprise there.
Can you give an example?
Well, I remember even doing, by the time I started doing, of course, I got cast in the Homecoming, and with that character, who I loved the character because she was such a tomboy, but there were times where the writers, and rightfully so, would want to capture the essence of a particular period in a child's life. So for me, my character was like 13, which is a challenging age.
Yeah.
And there were scenes, and when you get into where you've been cast, you have no choice. You have to say what's on the script. So that was sometimes really difficult for me. So in the Homecoming, there was a scene where, and it wasn't even in the original script, which made it tough. It was something that was written in, where she goes to John Boy, and she's like going through growing pains, and he's
Mhm.
teasing her, giving her a hard time. And at one point he goes, don't worry, they'll grow. And I'm like, what? And he goes, your bosoms. Well, that was the most humiliating thing for me to have to say as a 13-year-old who was already self-conscious about, my body, and not really, my boobs weren't really developing yet. They still haven't. I always joke about, well, John Boy said they would, and they never did. But it was sort of that, as a child, it was so hard to separate myself and be, I tried to have a detachment to it and think, I
Okay.
don't want anybody to think I really think this. I didn't want my personal vulnerabilities and
Okay.
insecurities and embarrassment. I didn't ever want anybody to think that any of that was real on me. I wanted them
Mm.
to always think I was just acting, because I felt like, well, if they know this is really personally embarrassing to me, I don't know if I can handle that, because then
Mm.
they might make fun of me for real. But as long as I can just pretend I'm just acting, I have no problem. So I just felt that I wanted to hide behind that I'm just acting. But anytime I had to do certain types of scenes that were very, very personal in that way, of things that I was personally embarrassed about,
Mm.
then they were hard scenes for me. So that was probably the toughest thing for me, um, in going through that as a child actor. Even though I was a little bit older, I think I experienced that even when I was very young. I mean, as long as I was playing make believe about things that were fun. But if it was something, yeah, and it was odd what I might consider embarrassing. I didn't like things where I felt victimy, like,
Mm.
I didn't have a problem crying. That was something that I'd always been able to create for a character. But I always wanted to feel like I was in control, I guess. So characters, which is why I liked the character of Marilyn, because she was a tomboy and she was tough and she was a rebel. So that was fun, but not the softer, more vulnerable sides of it.
Mm. Do you
I just felt too
find,
exposed.
did
you
you
know
find in adulthood, as you like in your personal life, is that something that you do find difficult, is sharing or being vulnerable with people? Is that something that you find hard to do as an adult?
Not, no, not with people I know, but it's a whole lot different to do something that's on screen,
Yeah.
um, or in front of all kinds of people you don't know. I think, I don't know whether it's the judgment thing, that people are going to have opinions about it, or how they're going to feel, what their perception of me personally is going to be, and what do I want that perception to be. I mean, it's different if I'm like hanging out with girlfriends or whatever, and and get into personal conversations about insecurities or vulnerabilities, because that's, you're sort of sharing with someone, but in this industry, it is full of judgment and opinions. And now more and more, as we deal with the in just the invasion of social media in our lives, and that as public figures, that anybody at any time can write any opinion they want,
Yeah.
and that's on social media, that anybody and everybody can see. And it just can feel very, um, I guess I'm not thick-skinned enough, and I've talked to other performers who, I mean, in some ways, you can't have too thick a skin to be an actor, because you have to be willing to be vulnerable and available to your emotions and everything. You can't have a tough shell like you can pretend to have in real life. And I think sometimes, because we deal in emotions and our emotions have to be accessible to us all the time, that you try not to be shut down. And yet personal attacks out in life, I feel like I want to be more guarded against. And it's hard for me to just kind of go, well, I don't care what people think. Well, they can say whatever they want about me. And I really admire people that can do that. It's like, so you get a bad review. So, you don't get hired for something. So somebody thought your performance was bad, or any of those things. And I'm like, no, that hurts. So those are some of the tough things about, being in the public, because people think they know you, and they don't, and they can have opinions about you, and they can be mean, and you're sort of, I've chosen it. So, but at the time I chose it, social media didn't exist. So I didn't have to hear every comment that anybody might have about me personally or professionally. What you look like, what a performance was like, anything. Someone doesn't like the look of your nose or the sound of your voice. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stuff that I'm like, really? Really? Oh, you changed the color of your hair and I liked it better before. Backhanded compliments, like, oh, great, or what'd you do to your nose, or what happened to your eyebrows? Or, I mean, people are, it's like astonishing to me how I just want to go, whoa, wait a minute, I'm just a person trying to live a life.
What do you think is the biggest assumption people make about you?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. I really don't. Um,
Is there one you've come across often?
um, I mean, I'm fortunate with my YouTube channel, that because I do interact with people on my YouTube channel all the time. I read what people say, and I mean, for better or worse, there's been some interesting things people have said that have made me go, "Oh, really?" And that it's kind of like listening to critiques of your work. Sometimes I will, if I hear it, I might look back and go, "Oh, really?" And then I make a judgment for myself. Do I agree with it? Do I not agree with it?
Hmm.
Fortunately, the majority of people on my YouTube channel are very sweet and very complimentary, about who they think I am as a person, and the way that I interact with my fans and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And I try to keep everything really positive. So, but the random sort of odd things that people will say. Uh, I mean, the fact is that there's people that are going to say negative things regardless. Uh, they're just there's people that you got glass half full, glass half empty kind of people, and um, so. But when if I get some really nasty comments, sometimes it makes me go, okay, I'm gonna take my toys to another sandbox, and I'm not gonna play anymore. And I get really tempted to do that because my feelings get hurt, even you know.
Hmm.
Um, but I realize that letting people who are unkind stop us from doing things that we want to do
Hmm.
gives them power that they shouldn't have.
Hmm.
If I let somebody's unpleasant comment about, if they were to say, not that this is a specific, but it's like, oh, I always thought you were terrible on that show, you can't act. If I let something like that make me go, oh, I should stop acting because somebody thinks I'm terrible, then they won. That's
Hmm.
like the worst of bullying, when we let people do that. So I kind of, that's one of the reasons why I actually do interact and read the comments on my YouTube, is because I don't let people be mean and cruel, less when it's about me, but just people being mean and cruel in general. It's sort of
Hmm.
like those people don't get to play. I will block people who are cruel to me or to anybody else, because I just don't feel like it's acceptable behavior, you know.
Right. What do you think, um, like right now in your life, what do you find the most joyful thing or the happiest part of the season you're in right now?
Ah, um, hmm, good questions. You have very thoughtful questions. I appreciate that. Um, I think in many ways I have a lot of freedom of choice. Um, I feel like I've been very fortunate in my life to have a lot of good opportunities, and it hasn't always been easy. Um, you know, this is not an easy business to navigate, but because of maybe one door closing, it's forced me to look at other paths. So when the series ended and I was very aware that I was typecast, I started looking at, well, if I can't be cast in television right now, what can I do? So then I went back to theater, and then moving into theater opened avenues behind the scenes as well, and opportunities to start writing and directing, and then exploring the singing. And so it made me sort of broaden my skill set
Hmm.
and challenge myself in new ways. So over the years, I've been fortunate to do a lot of things, and I still think some of the greatest joys in life are really the people that I have an opportunity to interact with,
Hmm.
because I think any experience is as what makes it a joyful experience or a miserable experience is really the people. It's
Hmm.
like a work thing. If I'm working with good, positive people and we collaborate and create something wonderful in a pleasant, fun, supportive environment, it's a great experience.
Hmm.
But if you create a great show and you've had people that are really miserable and cruel and abusive in that, then I think it diminishes, even if you've created something good,
Hmm.
and that you've had a positive. So I really, to me, it's about the people. When I have had the opportunity to create projects of my own, the joy of it is bringing together people that I like working with, and that I love nothing more than being able to hire people to do what they love to do. So when I have that opportunity, that gives me a lot of joy. Uh, the combination of the pandemic shutting down so much in the industry, and now a writer strike and an actor strike, has really put this this business into a very difficult few years. So again, trying to explore other things that can happen under those restraints, creates challenges. And I think, with challenges, we learn to rise to the occasion and whatnot. I being able to just explore other parts of life, which is what a lot of the last 2 years or 3 years have forced a lot of us to do. It's okay, well, how do you make your life enjoyable in the face of adversity? And that can be little things. I've always loved sports, so for me, a lot of times I'll turn to that as a emotional and physical outlet. I have a horse, and I enjoy the time I spend at the barn with the other people that I ride with. And, I just have started to do some competition again in 3-day eventing. And so there's a constant challenge there that has nothing to do with the stress of the entertainment industry. So finding a balance in my life, I think, is, has been fun, and to be able to not feel that I have to do things that I hate doing.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I'm in a position in my life where that is a choice, where it's like, someone comes with something, goes, well, do you want to do blah, blah? And if it's sort of something that doesn't speak to me in any way, then I can say, I'm going to pass on that. Which is, so that kind of freedom to make those choices in my life is part of it. But, always looking to find the people in my life that are, I think we create our own families. And families are kind of the heart, and they might include some of your blood relations, and they might mostly include people that that I've brought into my life because we're important to each other, and we have a mutual respect and caring for each other.
Yeah. What do you, as you're talking about the aspects of life that are good and like community friendships, what do you find hard about life, like personally, or maybe in the acting industry in general, but what do you find the hardest about life for you?
I Sometimes the way in which the industry has changed, and that I don't see as clearly my place in it anymore. I don't, when I was younger, I had, I guess, lofty aspirations to impact, to potentially get to a point where I had enough power that I could positively impact directions that things were going. I feel that in many ways, the industry is lacking a moral compass and a social compass, that, and it's not across the board, but I feel like I question a certain aspect of, where is it going and what kind of stories are we telling? And I feel that the entertainment industry has long been an inspiration and an impact on culture, that people look to the people that they see on the screen, and what's the new fashion, what's the new hairstyle, who are those characters they're seeing on the screen that they feel they want to emulate. And I feel like some of those role models now, to me, aren't so admirable. And, how much are people emulating that, and what kind of how is our culture being represented on a broad scale by some of the material that is being produced?
Hmm.
You know, I mean, television and film has always gone through cycles. You know, television went through, oh, we did the Westerns, and then we did the doctor shows, and then we did the law shows, and then we did the, you know, so it goes through phases. But I think that I sometimes feel that it's gotten so big and so spread out. It used to be, you know, when our show was on, there were 3 networks, and you kind of knew everything that was on. You liked it, you didn't like it, but you kind of knew what it was. And now I feel like there's all these opportunities, but I don't understand it anymore. It's like there's too many
Hmm.
channels, there's so much noise that it's like it's hard to find the shows that appeal to, you know, me as an individual. I talk to other people. I'm not saying we all have to like the same things, and I think there is, in a way, an opportunity for something for everyone. But I just sometimes like to see a little more social responsibility in some of what's being done.
Hmm.
You know, what is your kind of to say, you know, what is your purpose for doing this? And I can't say, you know, it's like I don't want to throw stones, because I can't say that everything I've ever done was had some brilliant, important message, nor do I think it has to be. Sometimes it can just be for the joy and the pleasure of entertainment.
Hmm.
But you know, I've been involved, and I've known a lot of people who are looking to create content, and sometimes, you know, people have sent scripts, or I've read scripts, and sometimes I look at something and go, why would you want to make this? You know,
Hmm.
what does it say? What is your message to an audience, and who is your audience? You know, and what kind of an impact do you think this is going to have on people watching it?
Hmm.
um you know, I don't know. Does that make sense? I mean, maybe, you know, sometimes I think, okay, well, I'm just getting older and I'm getting cynical. I don't know, you know, but I look at it all and I'm like, I just get tired, you know, looking at it and going,
Yeah.
well, what's, you know, I don't, it, it's like, you know, the players have changed, which of course they will. It's a younger generation. It's easy as you get older to feel like you aren't relevant anymore and you don't have a place in it. And that, so
Hmm.
things like that, I think, are hard and make me a little sad to think that, you know, it's like, okay, well, maybe the types of stories and the things that I feel I'm drawn to,
Hmm.
there just isn't, there maybe isn't a place for it anymore. I mean, you could talk about people who, you know, built trains, and then
Yeah.
trains weren't the mode of transportation, or the horse and buggy wasn't the mode of transportation. You know, things do evolve, and they need to. And, you know, there is a sort of changing of the guard where younger generations need the opportunity to say, great, we had our time, over to you. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the world? You know,
Yeah.
our generation made a mess of it. Sorry. You know, can you do something to improve it? And yet, knowing that there's there's a kind of a mess out there, you know, feeling like, what can each of us continue to do to try to improve
Hmm.
the situation through the voice that we might have? And what do we want? Do we want that voice to be one of anger or hatred, or inspiration or hope or love? Or what do we want that voice to be? And that by our actions, you know, we contribute to what's happening out there, you know?
Yeah. What I know there are a lot of things about life that, we'd like to change. It's just human nature that there's many things that need improvement. Um, what if you could, what do you think you'd change if you could do one thing?
Um, wow. Uh, you know, it can seem so simplistic. Uh, but I feel like, in a way, kindness, you know, that, and I think that might circle back to why I like the holidays, is I feel that
Mm.
oftentimes a spirit of kindness exists during the holidays, that maybe we see it more, maybe because we're out and about more, that, maybe people smile more, or they're kind to their fellow human beings. As I mean, we're all rushed, we all have stresses, but how you interact with other people is your choice. And you can at any given moment choose in a circumstance to be kind and to smile and to not be angry or harsh or judgmental or cruel or any of those types of things. That if we just looked for how we could support and help each other more. And I think that sometimes in crisis, I think we saw certain elements of that during the pandemic. And sometimes in crisis, we see that, where people come together and we all have differences, but that doesn't mean that we have to argue over them or fight over them. It's like, hey, just, it's okay if we don't think the same way, or we don't feel the same way, or we don't have the same ideology, or whatever. But that, I mean, it's a little like, can't we just learn to live together? And if you look at smaller microcosms, that's really, I mean, the world in general is made up of people. A country is a town, it's a collection of people. And so we can look at entities like, oh, well, this country is doing blah, blah. Well, that's a lot of individuals. They take on a generality of perception, but we each have the opportunity in our daily life, with every interaction we have with other people, to make a choice about, okay, something happened, you're frustrated, this item that you ordered wasn't the right one, and you're calling customer service, and you have some person on the line, and you have a choice to yell at that person and make them feel horrible because something got messed up, or have a little patience and kindness and, try to work through something in a more compassionate fashion. Or driving down the road. Yeah, we're all stuck in traffic. Okay, we're all stuck in traffic, and so monitoring and being responsible for ourselves and our own actions is really the starting point, and I think that, and it includes being kind to ourselves, and we can make a difference in so many small ways. And I think the world has gotten so big that it's that we can feel, what can I do? Well, if each person does their part in choosing to make that difference and not 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 put out their, anger and hatred and all of that, and judgment, and, all of that negativity. It sounds simplistic and idealistic and Pollyanna-ish and, all of that, but it's true. you know?
Hmm. Well, just as a last question, I appreciate your time too. How would you encourage maybe um actors in the acting industry, but not so much a big name, because so many actors and actresses are kind of, they don't make it to the huge big name. In fact, you have accomplished a lot that other actors and actresses may never, in the more local community sense. How would you encourage them if they're discouraged by, similar to what you said, they're seeing, there's a whole bunch of disagreement about how the acting industry should go, what that should look like. Then you have the musical theater aspect, where there are people who feel like, I was even interviewing Paul Gordon the other day, and it's kind of like feeling, I'm putting all this work in, and then I'm not getting any return for it. I'm not able to make a living on it, but this is my passion. And just these frustrations for budding actors and actresses, and also just people who've been in the industry for a while, but just they're not able to make that big break. How do
Mm.
you, how would you encourage them to keep going and continuing to do that, or how to see this chaotic time right now and to interpret it?
Oh gosh. It's so individual. I mean, I often say to people who say, well, if what do you say to someone who's thinking about getting into the industry? Oftentimes, I hate to say it, but my advice is if you think you would be happy doing anything else, do something else, because it takes tremendous perseverance and sacrifice and
Hmm.
commitment and all of that. And then there's still no guarantee you're going to make it. So
Hmm.
if you think it's between, well, I could be an actor, or, I could start a flower shop or whatever, it's like, if you think, because you potentially could have more control over your life doing something else. The thing that I have found, and that I think has given me some personal peace at times, is there's 100 ways to be creative. I mean, the bottom line I recognized for myself, because there were times where I went, you know what, this isn't happening in this moment in time, and I think I need to look at alternate professions maybe. And I'm not
Hmm.
getting enough work to satisfy me, or to know for sure I'm going to pay the rent next month, or it ebbs and flows. And so some of it depends on your degree of tolerance for that, and mine wasn't very high. I don't like to know where next month, I worry about where next month's rent's coming from so much, so I wanted maybe a little more security. But when I looked at other things, what I always came back to is that in my core, I'm an artist, I'm a creative person. And so
Hmm.
I started looking at, there's 100 different ways to be creative in your life. There was a point in time when my son was young, and I really wanted to be able to not be traveling, not be on the road doing theater, not, I wanted to be able to raise him. And I knew it wasn't practical to think that I had been doing a lot of work out of town, and that's not practical. And I had just remarried and moved with my new husband when my son was about 6, and I'd moved to like Sacramento. Well, there wasn't a whole lot going on in the arts in Sacramento. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? And the creative part of me went, well, I have this house that, and I started creating the house. And, it's like, what's my vision for this house? And
Hmm.
painting and decorating. And, so for me, that was, or I helped at my son's school with creating a little holiday show for his school. So to me, it was all about finding how I could create, because to me,
Hmm.
it was less about the fame than it was about the personal satisfaction. I
Hmm.
don't, I wasn't acting because, I just wanted the money, and because that gets old fast, and that'll suck your soul really fast. If you're doing things you hate doing, you're doing roles you don't like just for the money, that's again a case of go do something else, because, it's too much of a compromise.
Hmm.
So find the ways, whether you enjoy gardening or painting, or where are the creative outlets in your life. And I came to realize that as long as I had whatever for me that degree of creative outlet was, that I was okay, and it allowed for balance in my life.
Hmm.
um, so find the things you can control.
Yeah.
If you're that those are some of the really good things about the changes in the industry, is there's so many more avenues. That used to be that you could only be a book writer if you could get a publisher. Now you can self-publish, there's
Yeah.
so it's like, so, right, great, write whatever appeals to you and self-publish it and self-promote it. You've got social media, you got all these, learn how to promote yourself. There's so many things that you don't have to follow. There's no traditional paths anymore. I mean, it used to be an actor, you had to, yeah, a studio had to pick, you had to be part of the studio system, or,
Yeah.
you can create your own, you can get together fellow actors and pull together a show and put it on for, at the holidays or something like that. Like I'm in the process of putting together a little holiday concert with 4 singers and for, one of the little local clubs, or I know people would go out and they would perform for, nursing homes or things like that. So you can be proactive about finding paths for yourself. And
Hmm.
networking, there's a lot of groups. I was part of a writers group, which I found very inspiring for a number of years. Or
Hmm.
you get part, become part of a local theater group, and if they're not letting you in, create your own, and go out and get your friends and family to each put up $10. And I mean, you can do something with nothing. You can do black box theater, you could turn your garage into a performance space. It's really just get creative. And if you're someone who feels like, well, I'm not going to be happy unless I'm rich and famous, well, then you're going to have a different path. But if you're doing it because you have to do it and it's who you are, then you can find those avenues. And it isn't about recognition necessarily, because that comes and goes. There's always the flavor of the
Yeah.
month. How many, I could name you, a dozen people who were big stars that you might go, oh, suddenly I'll go, hey, I haven't, what was so-and-so doing lately? And that person might be working, might still be doing all kinds of stuff, but it's not high profile. And it's harder to be high profile these days
Yeah.
because there's so much out there. There's
Yeah.
actors who've been doing, it's like, oh, so-and-so. I'm like, who the heck is that? And I'll look and I go, oh, they've been doing some show for 6 or 8 years that I've never seen because it's on a network that I'm not a subscriber to.
Yeah.
So
Well,
chasing fame is like very ephemeral and not very satisfying.
yeah. Well, Judy, thank you so much. And again, for people listening, this was Judy Norton. She was talking about, um, she discussed a lot about acting, the holidays, creativity, some really, I think, thoughtful um, thoughts just on the industry itself. So I'd highly encourage you to listen. And again, her Christmas CD, check out her website. Um, Let her know as well if you listen to this podcast. I'm sure that'd be interesting to her. But thank you again, Judy, so much for your time. I appreciate it, especially that you went over the time we
Yeah.
gave.
Well, thank you. I know I rambled a lot and there's a lot of life philosophy and stuff. So hopefully some of it might strike a chord in someone out there.